Everyone needs to stop freaking out about the iPhone 11's triple camera bump. So the other day I was online and I of course saw the leaks and renders of this new iPhone 11 with this new triple lens camera setup. Of course, all the usual suspects who tweet leaks are pretty sure about this new iPhone 11 render, that it's going to be pretty accurate and that we're going to see an iPhone 11 with a triple camera setup, which includes 3 cameras and the flash in a pretty weird arrangement. In fact, in the previous video I did just a few days ago, I mentioned that the iPhone 11 was rumored to have a 3-lens camera setup. However, this camera system that we're seeing now is quite differently designed than we previously thought. And as I looked at these leaks, I thought to myself, okay, this does look a little bit weird, a little bit strange. I wasn't expecting the triple lens camera system to look like this, but as I scrolled through comments and comments and comments, I saw a lot of people freaking out about this rumor design of the iPhone 11. And to me, it just doesn't really make a lot of sense for a couple of reasons, and I want to lay that out in this video. So first and foremost, I just want to mention that just because we are seeing a render of an iPhone 11 and we're seeing this render with a triple lens camera setup and we're seeing it in that weird square shape that a lot of people aren't used to yet, that this iPhone 11 render isn't completely final. So everything about this render, from the way the finishing is going to be done in the camera to the size of how big this camera bump is going to be, is not finalized. None of the refinements that Apple would put on this render are done, so there's nothing like stainless steel edges maybe going around the square part of that camera bump. Maybe the camera bump isn't as big as some of the renders are making it out to be. Maybe it's more flush in line with the iPhone's camera. Maybe the renders that we're seeing are making the camera bump out to be a little bit bigger than it would be in person. We just can't really get a sense of how these iPhones are going to look based on 3D renders that people created who haven't even really seen the final design of this iPhone. And of course, there's just tons of refinements that Apple could make to the finalized design that we just aren't privy to yet. I would also like to point out that this might not even in fact be the final design of the iPhone 11, and that Apple does a lot of prototyping. Over the years, we've seen prototypes of previous Apple products, prototypes of previous iPhones that have never seen the light of day. In fact, when the iPhone 10 and the iPhone 8 were rumored, we saw a lot of leaks of certain iPhones, prototypes of iPhones that still had a top and bottom chin. And we also saw prototypes during that time of the iPhone shipping with smart connectors on the back, which is a little bit funny in hindsight because those smart connectors on the back of the iPhone never happened, but they did find their way to the back of the new iPad Pros. And as one of the leakers points out, that this is actually not the final rendering of the iPhone 11. He refers to this as an engineering validation test, and an engineering validation test is just an indication of what types of features we will see on the iPhone 11. So that just means the feature set, like the iPhone 11, is definitely going to include 3 cameras. In no way is this a final mock-up of the iPhone 11. In no way is this a complete indication of the type of design that Apple will be implementing with the iPhone 11. It's just an engineering test. It's just a validation to see how that triple lens camera system will work. And like I mentioned at the start of this video, maybe the finalized prototype of this will be smaller. Maybe it won't even be a square camera module. Maybe it will have the cameras going down like now and just have 3 lenses. But aside from that, aside from if the leaks are fake and if these prototypes aren't really refined all the way, my next question to you is, are these design leaks even really that bad? Are they even that ugly? And of course, the initial bandwagon when you see something new, when you see a new design, is to initially jump on the train of hating it. And we've seen this a lot with recent Apple products. For example, when the iPhone 7 Plus was rumored and I first saw the way they were going to do the dual camera setup, I thought it didn't really look quite right in those early design leaks. But when the iPhone 7 Plus finally shipped, I had no issue with the design of the camera bump on the iPhone 7. Even in more recent memory, if we go back to when the iPhone 10 designs were leaking out, a lot of people, when they saw those early designs, those early indications of how Apple was making this camera, how Apple was changing it, did not like the design of that new camera. But now that the iPhone 10 has shipped, now that we've had a chance to see how this vertical design camera looks, I don't really think there's anyone complaining about that design anymore. And quite frankly, I prefer the way the vertical camera looks on the iPhone 10 to the horizontal layout of the iPhone 7 Plus. It also reminds me a lot of when we first saw the leaks of the notched design on the iPhone 10. A lot of people at that time, when they first saw the notch design leaked on the iPhone 10, were saying that Apple would never do a design like that. Apple would never put a notch on their phone. Apple, of course, is going to cover that notch up with software. And this kind of echoes the sentiment I've been seeing about the squared camera design on the rumored iPhone 11 design. A lot of people are kind of coming in with the same exact quotes as other times when Apple changed the design on an iPhone, with that trademark of Apple would never release a design like that. And I would really never rule that out from Apple. Over the years, we've seen them release tons and tons of designs that people, of course, were skeptical at first. Even with the iPad, when it was rumored to have a flat design, people said, of course, that can't be real. Of course, it's going to be a curved design in the end. And even with that smart connector, it was bigger than the old smart connector. And when early leaks were coming out, people were saying, well, Apple wouldn't put that big of a smart connector on the back of it. But of course, the iPad Pro did ship out in a new flat design and with a bigger smart connector on the back, and people love the new design of the iPad Pro. Some people are even saying that future iPhones should be designed like the new squared iPad Pro. That leads me personally to be a little bit more cautious and not easily dismiss this new leaked design as something that Apple would never do. I'd also like to point out that a popular leaker who has been right about a lot of the previous iPhone designs, Venya G-Skin, over on his Twitter, G-Skin made a mock-up of what he thinks the iPhone 11 will look like in its final design. And when he made this design, when he put this iPhone 11 render together, he made that square camera bump a little bit smaller. And he actually asked the question, does this really look that bad to you? It started to grow on him, and as he put out that picture, as I studied it more closely, that squared camera design started to grow on me as well. Because in the first design, if you see it right here, you can see how big and how bulbous this square design is, and we're immediately turned off by it. But like I said in the start of this video, Apple is going to add refinements down the line, and if you look at Venya's prototype, if you look at his 3D rendering of what he thinks the iPhone 11 is going to look like, it actually looks a little nicer than you might think. Now, a lot of people are also dismissing this 3D design leak based on the arrangement of the cameras. They're saying that Apple, of course, would never do a squared camera design because they would do a triple camera design where it goes right down the vertical layout as it is now. But I have to question that and say that maybe that the vertical camera design for 3 cameras isn't going to offer any added benefit to the customer. Maybe by placing those cameras in the leaked 3D designs is more beneficial to the consumer. In fact, it leads me to believe that the placement of the cameras that we're seeing in the leaked iPhone 11 concepts, the arrangement leads me to believe that it might be better for certain things. So it might be better for portrait mode, it might be better for depth mapping, it might be better for augmented reality. Maybe the reason why the camera bump is so much bigger is because Apple's placing in a bigger camera sensor behind it, which would lead to way better image quality. Maybe this will be an increased megapixel size for the iPhone 11's camera, or just a bigger sensor size in general will lead to better images, better low light improvements. We've also seen Apple add smart HDR to this year's iPhone XS and iPhone XR, and maybe those 3 lenses are a new way of using that smart HDR feature. So the current way the iPhone XS and iPhone XR works is by taking a bunch of different shots at different exposure levels and merging them together. And that kind of creates the images as they're found in the iPhone XS and iPhone XR, where they're merging all these different lighting conditions together to kind of give you a better picture. Maybe the arrangement on the cameras on the iPhone 11 is going to have all 3 cameras shoot off at once. And when all those 3 cameras shoot off at once, maybe it's going to be able to capture a lot of different detail, a lot of different depth mapping to kind of give you a better picture after it's all done processing. So even if the final design isn't as beautiful as the vertical camera layout that we have on the iPhone 10, maybe it's such an added benefit to customers that Apple is willing to give up a little bit of the design to give you a lot better picture quality, because one of the most important features to any smartphone customer is the ability to have a really great camera. We also don't know what that third lens is going to be quite yet. Maybe it's just going to be another zoom lens, like a 5x zoom. Maybe it's going to be a wide angle lens, or maybe it's going to be a monochromatic sensor, which would kind of give way to my theory that this new 3 triple lens setup is going to be for better image quality, so it can shoot off all 3 lenses at once, and maybe merge those 3 cameras with that smart HDR software to just give you a really great image. And it just kind of leads me to my final point, that when a lot of stuff from Apple leaks originally, we always kind of see this backlash that, oh, Apple would never do this, Apple would never implement this feature, Apple would never design a product like that. And for this one, I just don't really want to jump to those conclusions given that we haven't seen the final product yet. Who knows if the camera will even ship like this, if it's just a prototype, if Apple will go for the vertical 3 arrangement. Maybe the arrangement of those cameras has nothing to do with the added benefits I mentioned at the end of this video. Maybe this is just an early prototype and Apple did this just to get that out there as quick as possible so they could test the 3 camera setup. I think we can just take a sigh of relief. I think we can take a fresh breath of air until this product actually ships, because we've seen leaks before that have never seen the light of day, and we don't know what it's gonna look like when Apple is all set and done designing it. Okay, everyone, what do you think? Do you like the new arrangement of those iPhone 11 cameras? I know my opinion is probably unpopular. If you do like it, if you don't like it, let me know in the comments below. As always, guys, if you like the video, make sure you give me a like. If you want to see more from my channel, make sure you're subscribed. And as always, I will see you all in the next video. Take care, everyone.